Picture the richest person on your street. Now picture what they drive, what they're wearing, the size of their house. Got that picture in your head? There's a strong chance you just pictured the wrong person entirely. Real wealth, as it turns out, is remarkably good at hiding in plain sight. Here's a number that tends to catch people off guard. Right now, in the United States, something close to 24 million people are millionaires. Do the math, and it works out to roughly 1 in every 11 adults. Which means on an ordinary street, in an ordinary neighborhood, there's a solid chance at least one household nearby is quietly sitting on a 7-figure net worth. And it's almost never the household you'd point to first. We've been trained by watches, cars, and vacation photos to think we know what money looks like. But the people who study wealth for a living keep finding the opposite. The flashiest house on the block is often financed to the ceiling. The quietest one might be owned outright by someone who never once mentioned it. So today, 9 real research-backed signals that separate people who look rich from people who actually are. Most of what we know about how millionaires actually live comes from 2 places. One is a large national study out of Ramsey Solutions, which surveyed more than 10,000 millionaires, the biggest study of its kind ever done in North America. The other goes back further, to a researcher named Thomas Stanley, who spent decades interviewing wealthy Americans for his book, The Millionaire Next Door. Both found something nearly identical. The people with real money looked nothing like the people who looked like they had money. Stanley's most famous description of the wealthy was 3 words, repeated for emphasis: frugal, frugal, frugal. And his sharpest idea boiled down to one sentence: wealth is not the same thing as income. Earn a lot and spend all of it, and you're not getting wealthier, you're just living well for the moment. Sign number 1. Look at the car in the driveway and how long it's been sitting there. The vehicle is the single most reliable place people fake wealth. And, ironically, the single most reliable place real millionaires disappear into the background. Stanley's research found most millionaires aren't driving this year's model. More than a third buy their cars used. Outright, no financing. Take Frank. Frank runs a small heating and cooling company, and he drives a pickup truck with 140,000 miles on it. Not because he can't afford better, but because it runs fine and it's been paid off for years. A couple of doors down, a younger couple leases a fresh European sedan every 3 years. If you had to bet which household is worth more than $1 million, instinct points at the sedan. Instinct is usually wrong. A leased luxury car is a monthly payment wearing an expensive costume. A paid-off truck that's been cared for is a decision to own instead of impress, and that single decision, repeated across every purchase in a life, is most of what separates a millionaire from someone who just looks like one. Sign number 2. Check the wrist and the everyday clothes, because the wealthy almost never wear their money. In Stanley's research, half the millionaires he surveyed had never spent more than a few $100s on a suit in their entire lives, or more than a couple hundred on a watch. The single most common watch brand among American millionaires wasn't a Swiss name from a magazine. It was a plain, reliable brand most people wear without thinking twice. Think of it as a split between 2 types. Some people are income statement rich. Their lifestyle looks impressive only as long as the paychecks keep flowing. Others are balance sheet rich. They own things outright and owe almost nothing. Only the second group is actually wealthy, and they're usually wearing something you'd walk right past without noticing. Sign number 3. Look at the house, then widen your view to the whole neighborhood. According to the Ramsey study, more than half of American millionaires live somewhere the average household income is under $75,000 a year. The wealthy person is far more likely to buy a solid house in a modest area and stay there for decades, letting a paid-off mortgage quietly do its work, than to stretch into the biggest house a bank will approve. Take Loretta. She's a retired school teacher who paid off her modest house in her early 50s, then redirected every dollar that used to go toward the mortgage straight into investments for the next 15 years. Loretta is a millionaire today, and not one person in her neighborhood would guess it. The house that screams money is very often owned by someone whose real net worth is a rounding error next to their debt. Sign number 4. Notice who never talks about money, because silence is one of the loudest signals there is. There's an old saying Stanley loved, "Big hat, no cattle." It describes someone wearing every outward marker of wealth while owning almost nothing underneath. The genuinely wealthy tend to be the reverse. You won't hear them mention what things cost, or drop a hint about the size of the portfolio. That shows up in person as a kind of calm. The neighbor who's always narrating their next upgrade is often the one under the most financial pressure. There's even a name for the opposite pattern: stealth wealth, a deliberate choice, because visible money invites requests, envy, and pressure. Sign number 5. Find out what they actually do for a living. Because the wealthy tend to hide inside the least glamorous jobs on the block. The top careers among millionaires in the Ramsey study weren't hedge fund manager or startup founder. They were engineer, accountant, teacher, and attorney. This is where one of Stanley's sharpest ideas earns its keep. He split people into two camps: prodigious accumulators, who build far more wealth than their income would predict, and underaccumulators, who earn a lot and keep almost none of it. Picture two people, both 50, both earning around $90,000 a year. One runs a mobile home dealership and has quietly built a net worth well over $1 million. The other is an attorney whose net worth sits closer to $200,000 because the income funds a lifestyle that swallows every raise. Same paycheck. One is genuinely wealthy. The other only looks the part. If you're finding this useful, hit subscribe. The next 4 signs are the ones that actually decide who becomes wealthy and who only looks it. By the end, you'll be able to run this test on your own life. Sign number 6. Watch how they invest, because real wealth is built on habits that are almost aggressively boring. In the Ramsey study, 8 in 10 millionaires built their fortune through an ordinary workplace retirement account. Not one credited their success to a hot stock. They got rich by contributing steadily into plain retirement accounts and index funds, then leaving it alone for decades while it compounded. $500 a month invested steadily at an 8% return grows to somewhere around $745,000 over 30 years, even though the person only put in about $180,000 of their own money. Here's a quick test, straight from Stanley's research. Take your age, multiply it by your yearly income before taxes, then divide by 10. That's roughly the net worth you should have if you're keeping pace. Sign number 7. Pay attention to what they owe. Because the wealthy are strangely allergic to debt. They pay cash, or close to it, for their cars. Their credit cards get cleared in full every month, and their biggest debt, the mortgage, is something they attack and eliminate, not refinance into forever. Loretta never earned a large salary in her life, but she never once carried a balance she couldn't pay off immediately, and she treated her mortgage like an enemy to be defeated early. Debt is the great disguise. It lets people who own almost nothing appear to own a great deal, and lets people who own a great deal get mistaken for having nothing at all. Sign number 8. Study their spending habits up close, because the small daily choices give them away completely. The wealthy aren't cheap. That distinction matters. Being cheap means refusing to spend at all. Being frugal means spending deliberately on what actually matters to you, and calmly ignoring the rest. So the millionaire on your street might spend real money on their kids' education, then buy the same generic groceries as everyone else, without a shred of embarrassment. Recent data shows most people saving only a small single-digit percentage of what they earn. The wealthy, by contrast, consistently invest somewhere between 15 and 20% year after year. Sign number 9, and this one plays out across an entire generation. Look at their grown children. Stanley named something he called economic outpatient care, the steady stream of money flowing from well-off parents to their adult kids, covering the down payment, the nicer car, the lifestyle those kids can't yet afford on their own. He found it quietly backfires almost every time. The kids who receive the most tend to accumulate the least. There's an old saying for how fast unearned money disappears: shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. So one of the subtlest signs of real money is a grown son or daughter who's quietly, unremarkably self-sufficient. So the next time you walk down your own street, look again, and look slower. Look past the leased car and the loud renovation, and look instead for the paid-off truck, the plain watch, the modest house lived in for decades, the neighbor who never mentions what anything costs. That person cracked a code that has almost nothing to do with a giant salary, and almost everything to do with the daily gap between earning and spending. If any of these 9 signs describe someone you know, or maybe described you, Tell me in the comments which one hit hardest.